And we are live!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 119 of Those Aren't Biscuits podcast. I am one of your hosts, Jonathan Cadotte, and with me, as always, is Owen Adams.
Yeah, hello.
How are you, buddy?
Not bad, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing just fine. For those of you who have not joined us before, this is a live streaming podcast where I hear echoes sometimes. And
working on it.
During this podcast, we talk about pop culture things, movies, television, music, books, comic books, video games, you name it, we've probably talked about it. Being that this is a live streaming podcast, we have a live audience with us in the chat room, and we will be addressing them periodically throughout the show. So if you're listening to one of our recorded sessions and it sounds like we're talking to people who you can't hear or whatever, that's what we're doing. Oh. And now I'll teach you. If you're listening to a recorded version, you should check in on a live stream one of these days.
Does it feel like a long time since we did the last one? I know it's not. But I don't feel very withered.
Well, I mean, let's be fair. We're talking varying degrees of witheredness when it comes to you.
And you, apparently. Excellent timing on that slickly executed burn.
It's a slow burn. It'll get to you later, you know? Laying in bed, about to sleep. Babe, am I not with it? So
I always like
welcome
the old Simpsons where Mr. Burns says, "What's the matter? I'm not hip. I'm not with it. Not got enough vodeo dough."
So what you been up to, man?
Well, the day before yesterday, I was at a wedding, which was very exciting. My girlfriend's brother getting married.
So your brother-in-law, okay.
Well, kind of, I suppose. Sort of. Yeah. Almost. Maybe. I don't know. Does it count if I'm not married to my girlfriend? Which I'm not.
It's your brother-in-law in a not-so-legal way.
Right.
Which is ironic.
So not really, at all, basically. No, it was good.
The intent is there.
It was a good event. Took it out of me a little bit, though. I haven't been to a wedding for a long time. And it was a good long day. And I spent the whole day afterwards just doing nothing. I was like, you know what? I'm having a post-wedding day. It wasn't even my wedding. I'd be terrible on a honeymoon, I'd be like, no. I'm just sleeping. Where are we going to the honeymoon? We're going to the bed section of IKEA. Where we will sleep.
You're such a romantic.
I know. Can't be helped. No, it was very nice. They had a lot of stuff going. They had one of those photo booths you can hire where everyone has free pictures taken. Like a.
Did you utilize it?
I did, because it was at the request of the couple that everyone take photos and save a copy for them to share, basically. So we did, and
I feel like I've been seeing that a lot more at weddings, where it's like not just the photo booth, but like the attendees have to somehow like help with the like memories section of things,
right? Like it was also one of those where they put the disposable camera on the table, which has become quite a common trend. Which is weird because I haven't used one of those old-fashioned cameras in a long time. It was like a trip to the distant past of having to peer through a weird, stupid lens. And you're like, do you remember when you used these things and you'd have no idea how your picture was going to look at all?
Right.
Until 6 months down the line when you'd get a load of grey, blurry shapes in someone's nose back.
The one I saw one time, I wasn't at this wedding, I just saw something about it online, but it was the same idea, where they we're going to have disposable cameras that can, but because these people were geniuses, and apparently had some money to blow, knew that everyone had cell phones and camera phones anyways, so they just left blank SD cards
That's a good
on all
idea.
the tables, where you could open it up, you pull it out, and then you left the SD card behind.
It's great until you leave behind the wrong SD card.
Right.
Like, hey, Bob and Jean, don't look at my table's SD card, please. If you could just, just delete that.
So that's you're gonna see something of your sister that you don't want to see.
Yeah, that would ruin that plan. The first time that happened, I think. But there's not much I can say about
they're going through the slideshow at like a family gathering. It's like, oh look, that's Aunt Carol and Aunt Rhonda. They're oh, that's sweet. They took some pictures of themselves. And, looks like they don't know how to use their selfie stick. And this is apparently my sister, Spread Eagle, on the back.
Yeah.
I didn't know you owned a horse's head.
So, other than that, not that much interesting to say about the wedding, except for the fact that it was nice, but it was a wedding, I was there all day. I didn't get much done yesterday, but I did get the fast food story of my own we've been angling for, because you've wanted me to go to Taco Bell for a while. Should we run into the Taco Bell experience?
Yes.
A Taco Bell has opened in my town, and I went to it. There we go. That's the whole story, right? That's all you want to know, right? Yeah.
Oh, just tell it to me slowly.
See, it's interesting because I can't really count the amount of times stories you have told me have begun in the Taco Bell, but my experience was relatively pleasant. Mm-hmm. So it's a new restaurant. They have like little greeters in the establishment to tell people how it works there. Let people know the score. New franchise and all that. We can't order food without a welcome party, apparently.
Right.
And they have that system where you order your food and then you get given a number, right? It's really busy and they're not preparing it like any fast food I think I've ever seen, because they're actually preparing it incredibly slowly. So It was pretty busy, and there were a lot of people waiting to try it out, including a lot of people who just look like they don't want to be there. Like they've been required.
They're trying to get the authentic experience. Just like, oh god, I'm at Taco Bell again.
Right.
I've made some mistakes.
Right, so there's a lot of people who are like, I wish I'd just gone to McDonald's. It's round the corner. It's really huge, and the number they give me, it's a 6-digit number, and I start to think, I really hope, is this how many they've served today? It's a 6-digit number and it begins with a 2, right? The first number that comes up begins with a 3, and I'm like, so I'm either
I have to wait for them to come back around.
I'm either way behind here, or it's not numerical. Fine. So close the numbers. First off, they start
counting down.
Right, but it's not, because you see the numbers start getting right. And what happens when we hit 0? Does the restaurant close?
Who's number 0?
Does the restaurant close and it goes away again? And they're like, that was it. That was our allocation of food.
Like, you're customer 0. You get, unfortunately, you get the Death-a-rito. It's just a Smith & Wesson 38 wrapped in a tortilla. One single bullet. Just, you know what you have to do.
Yeah. Well, what sides would you like with that? They get you a few nachos, complimentary. So.
Yeah. Can I get fire sauce with that?
So I'm in with my girlfriend. We go in together. She goes to sit down, finds a nice place to sit. I wait for the food, and about the most interesting thing that happened while waiting for the food was I stood in the emptiest part of the store, and yet 5 people pushed through me to get their own food. Like, it's a pretty small building, right? But but there were like around the tables there were like 4 different routes to the counter. 3 people shoved me hard, like to get through. But the food comes, and we've ordered like some basic Taco Bell provisions, I suppose. Tacos, enchiladas, and it was good. This story is not that interesting, by the way. I'm really only telling it because, you know, you wanted me to go. Why don't you ask me questions? I'll do my best to enlighten them. But it was good. I liked it. The number was amusing. What?
What'd you have to drink with it?
Pepsi Max.
Oh my god.
It's my drink of choice.
Did they have all the crazy Mountain Dews?
No, did they bollocks? It's English Taco Bell. It's not going to have anything exciting yet.
Well, I mean, but it's still part of a chain, so you'd think like...
Nope. No crazy Mountain Dew.
Because here, like, I think in part, Taco Bell might be partially owned by PepsiCo.
Right.
Or something, because whenever Mountain Dew, which is owned by Pepsi, has like a new thing, and above all else, Mountain Dew has new variations on itself more than any other soda I've ever seen. And but whenever they have a new one, it's always like, yeah, and you can go to Taco Bell and try it first. And Code Red started there.
And everyone's like, it just got worse.
Do you guys have Code Red?
No.
Oh my, it's like cherry Mountain Dew. Oh, it's delicious, actually.
Nope. We don't get a lot of these variations of products.
Your country sucks.
Yeah, it's not great.
At least in terms of Mountain Dew. Like that should have been on
the only metric
not
that
Brexit.
matters. We're shifting from GDP to MDV, Mountain Dew varieties. But yeah, so I went. We had the food. It was good. I liked the tacos more than I thought I would, because we got 2. We got a chicken and a beef, and I was expecting to like the chicken significantly more, but the beef was fantastic. It was really good. It tasted fantastic. I wanted more. I wish I'd got 2 beef ones.
I can't imagine that. Well, I don't know. After you're discussing your lack of Mountain Dew, so I feel more confident about this. You guys probably aren't all that familiar, or like the taco seasoning isn't very common for you guys, I imagine.
Well, see, Mexican food, it's worth mentioning, is not that, like, was not for a long time that common in Britain anyway, right? And the brand that was most associated with it here, I don't know if this is an international brand, but it was a brand called Old El Paso. Do you have that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And they're like home kits.
Yeah.
That was Mexican food in this country until like the late 90s. That was it. So taco seasoning, I don't know. That was apparently what was on the fries, which apparently we discussed this earlier, and you were surprised that they had fries. You were surprised and appalled.
Well, okay, so of course Taco Bell's like have variations across the country. So I guess like the idea of Taco Bell with fries probably doesn't sound weird to some people, but like to me, our Taco Bells like here in Wisconsin do not serve fries. They have some other stuff that you can get for sides. You can get like pinto beans and cheese. You can get there's I can't think of all of it, but you can get like a bunch of different stuff for sides. But the most common one, that one that always just comes with your meal, is just another taco.
Right. That's not really a side, though, is it? I want to know why that constitutes a side.
Because normally, like, you don't order a taco at Taco Bell. Honestly, like, that's not. I can't imagine people go in there and like order just tacos most of the time, because like over here, Taco Bell is well known for having like these like really kind of crazy foods, where it's just, like, oh yeah, we took a quesadilla, rolled it up, and then we wrapped it in another tortilla and stuffed cheese in between, and it's
See, I
like
think they had that.
it's a quesarito. And
Yeah, they had that. I didn't order
okay.
it because, like I say, we were trying to like sample the basics, you know.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh yeah, we took we took two flat, hard, crunchy discs, and in between those two discs we put ground beef, nacho cheese, sour cream, lettuce, onion, tomato, and more cheese, and we pressed it together, and we wrapped the whole thing in a soft tortilla, and we grilled that bitch, and it's like, no, all right, that's a Crunchwrap Supreme. It's
Right.
it's stuff like that, and it's where finally this has kind of died away. But there used to be this response I used to get when you're like, oh man, I love Taco Bell. Well, it's not real Mexican food. Really? It's they used to drive me insane.
I imagine we'll start getting the crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think they need to establish a little bit at the moment, though, so I don't know. It'll be interesting.
Or
I'd go there again.
Like the one they've done, I think, because they always do like this new thing where it's like, oh, it's a chalupa, but we basically baked the chalupa thing in crusted cheese on the outside, so it's a cheese-a-lupa,
Right.
It's just really stupid shit like that, and they'll be there for a while, and then they kind of test out the market, where it's like, oh, okay, well, is this okay? Are people buying it? If they're not, we nix it. And I think probably their biggest success since doing that was the Doritos Locos Taco, which is honestly kind of brilliant in its concept. Because in my thought is like, how has no one ever thought of this shit before? But the Doritos Locos Taco is a normal hard shell taco, but instead of a normal taco shell, it's just a giant fucking Dorito. With the dust on it and the nacho cheese dust and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
And it's good. It's pretty good, actually. And it's one of those things where like, wow, no one really thought of this. Jesus.
See, we might not get the other stuff because we don't even get like the weird KFC stuff. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I know KFC stuff is comparatively not as weird, but they do stuff like that. Like, we never got the double down, you know?
Yeah, you weren't missing out much.
No, but like as a philosophy, we don't get that kind of product as much.
Mm-hmm.
I guess maybe people just don't eat. People do eat fast food here as much, but maybe the buying patterns don't reflect like a willingness to get the crazy crap as much. You know?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a. I'm not gonna say like inherently American thing, but like, I think as a whole, like Americans like really enjoy some craziness,
Right.
Like, okay, just for example, today, I swung by Burger King. You guys have Burger King, right?
Yep.
And they had these before, and I never got a chance to try them. But they're like, oh, we brought them back, and it's the Cheetos and Mac.
Right. Yeah, we never got that either.
Okay, yeah. So in case anyone doesn't know, these are monstrosities. Essentially, they took macaroni and cheese and basically hollowed out like the big puff Cheetos, not like the crunchy ones, but the big puff ones. They hollowed those out and just filled it with macaroni and cheese and then like deep fried that bitch. And I'm like, okay, well I'm gonna try it now. They're gross. They're really not good. But it's like in my head I'm like, I kind of admire the guy who's all like, all right, Steve, we need something new next week. Our sales are slumping. We need something, anything. And he's sitting at home like eating some Kraft macaroni and cheese, and he looks over at a bag of Cheetos like, huh, and like, cause that's kind of what like fast food in America has become. We have started to celebrate the fucked up creations you come up with when either you're broke and all you have is like 6 things in the house. It's like, all right, how do I piece these together today? And or B, it's kind of like this stoner culture where it's like, oh man, I dip my Oreos in this thing of queso, and it's delicious. Let's make it a menu item, you know?
I was reading about recently, I don't know how I ended up reading about this, but I was reading about the guy who invented the Filet-O-Fish. Mm-hmm. And it's an interesting story because, originally he was a McDonald's franchise owner who was losing business because he was in a Catholic community, and so every Friday, in the 60s, there would be a lot of people who wouldn't eat meat, right? Mm-hmm. And the restaurant down the road served more than just burgers. So he was getting killed because they'd go there every Friday, so they'd go there the rest of the week too, you know? He was just losing all that business. And so he came up with basically the Filet-O-Fish, basically the same as it is now. Mm-hmm. And he proposed it to the company, but you're not allowed to sell anything unless it's company cleared, right? Very strict franchising rules. That's not the interesting bit. The interesting bit is, I can never remember the guy's name, but you know the guy who's credited as the McDonald's founder, but he actually just stole the company from the brothers? The guy...
Right. They just had a movie about him.
Right, with Michael Keaton.
Which I want to see, actually.
Yeah, it looks really good. He had noticed a similar trend, and he was introducing he was like, nah, we don't need your Filet-O-Fish. I've got this cracked. I'm introducing my own, my own product for this. It's called the Hawaiian Hula Burger. And it was like, oh, what is that? And it was just a slice of pineapple between bread.
What?
That was his solution. Like, never mind fish, we'll have a slice of pineapple between bread. And the guy who came up with it managed to convince, what was his name? It's like Ray Kroc, I think it is. Anyway, he managed to convince him to do a trial, right? So they set it up so that 2 restaurants in the same city would, on a Friday, sell these 2 things. One would sell the hula burger, and another would sell the Filet-O-Fish. And at the end of the day, whichever one sold more, that would be the new item added to the menu. And
yes, I can kind of understand the thought behind the hula burger, actually.
Like a fruit. It's a precursor to the idea of a vegetarian burger, clearly.
Well,
and they want it to be round and...
Not just that. If I'm thinking like maybe the timelines match up, we're talking about a time when like America was like, even though like Hawaii was a state for a while, during kind of like the 50s and 60s, there was kind of this love affair with Hawaii, where everyone wanted everything Hawaiian, like Blue Hawaii and you know, Elvis and all that. You know,
that doesn't mean people want to eat just pineapple between bread for their lunch.
Right. But I might be able to understand, like, okay, well, you know, people of Hawaii, so.
So and at the end of the day, he said, well, how many did you sell? And I think he said he sold like a few thousand Filet-O-Fish a day, or something like, I think it was something like 700. And the woman he spoke to just said, right, you're on the menu, and wouldn't tell him how many of the hula burgers they'd sold. And he died without finding out how many of the hula burgers actually sold, which I thought was a pretty funny story.
Does anyone know?
I guess Ray Kroc knew, but apparently they haven't tried to reintroduce it.
Yeah, because what was I'm gonna have to watch a movie to know the whole story, but from what I understand, like he basically stole McDonald's from the brothers via like real estate.
Well, it's a fascinating story because they ran a restaurant. And he sold milkshake machines, is how they met. And he convinced them to franchise and basically to let him run the franchising bit. Mm-hmm. And then he basically gradually removed their rights, basically. The relationship soured. They tricked him, though. They got one over on him because they managed, without his knowledge, to exclude their original restaurant from the deal, and he was apparently livid when he found out. He was absolutely furious about it. And then he opened a McDonald's right across the road from where the original restaurant was, and forced them to change their name to something like the Big M. I want to see that film too. I think it looks really good. It's done by the same people who did that film about Walt Disney, Saving Mr. Banks. That one.
Oh yeah.
Looks pretty good.
Oh, I wonder if I guess there's some people had some discrepancies about that one too.
Yeah, I hear that one's interesting.
Because that was a story of Disney and like the
woman who wrote Mary Poppins.
Mary Poppins, yeah.
Who did not have a very high opinion of the film, all told. Because have you ever read the Mary Poppins books plural?
Mm-mm.
She's chubby, vain, and a little fussy, if you know what I mean. She's quite a different character. She's not nice, if you know what I mean. But magical things sort of happen when she's around, is the conceit.
It's kind of... Is it kind of like what happened like with Nanny McPhee, though? Like,
I have never seen a Nanny McPhee film, so I have no idea.
But yeah, because she's like not very attractive, but she's like a witch, and yeah, I don't know.
Right. Technical conversation didn't have as much in it as we thought, did it? I am not with it tonight.
Well, okay, that's fine. So, we aren't here to talk about Mary Poppins or McDonald's or...
Speak for yourself.
Nanny McPhee. We're here for another movie.
Uh-huh.
You want to tell us what movie it is?
Shall I sing the classic theme tune? I couldn't sing the classic theme tune if I tried. That TV show has been quite forgotten, hasn't it, these days?
Not anymore, I don't think.
Yeah, it's going through a bit of a resurgence. We saw Wonder Woman, didn't we? That was the one.
Yeah.
Wonder Woman. That was the theme tune. Thought I couldn't remember it. Yeah, it was just the song Wonder Woman. Just Wonder Woman sang. Wonder Woman. I've never seen that show.
I have.
Any good?
Times.
For the time period.
I mean, it was your 70s action little. It was a lot of like, oh, Wonder Woman, get her, pew pew pew, pink pink pink. Just
right.
And then lasso, cutaway camera. Cut to guy in lasso, like, no!
Right. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, a lot of that. But yeah, we saw Wonder Woman.
We did see Wonder Woman.
And damn, has there not been a lot of, like, oh, all these people are not Wonder Woman fans. I've been watching the show since the 70s, sort of thing happening. Like,
Yeah. Who would have thought that when you give a character that has never had a movie, it widens the audience for that character.
Right.
And these are the same fucking people who are always saying, nobody respects my love of comics and superheroes. It's always the same people,
Yeah, I mean, that's a topic for another day. But
there's been the SJW's crowd as well. Mm-hmm. There always is the usual kooks you get for everything these days.
Yep.
The kooks.
Wonder Woman.
What'd you think of it? Well, should we get into in depth straight away? I don't know. I was worried at the opening that I wasn't gonna like it.
Okay.
And the reason for that is, while I do think it's pretty impressive that comic book movies have come so far these days, that we got an honest-to-God, accurate, true-to-source depiction of Themyscira.
Right.
That period of the film has the kind of thing I don't really like about DC movies, where it is a lot of characters standing around talking about how important they are. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of talk about destiny, and I think it's totally fair to say this is early on in the film. Nothing in it's bad, but it felt like it was a little lengthy and a little bit like I wasn't really sure where it was going. And also, like, it's the opening to Moana, so like that is that plot. It's that cliche girl island purpose leaves. It felt like the opening to a Disney movie that I've seen before. And it was...
But to be fair, Moana probably stole that opening from Wonder Woman. You know, because this comic book has been around for
sure,
ages.
Sure. And I totally think that's fair. And I appreciated seeing it. And there were some things about it that were very nice visually. I didn't think any of it was bad. But I wasn't sure while ever we were on Themyscira, even though it was really nice to see an accurate, fully populated by women, warrior princess Amazon Themyscira, the film felt like it was going to be... I don't want to say humorless, but it felt like it was going to be very, very lofty and not very human, you know, at that point. Yeah. Does that make sense?
I think you and I differ. Yeah, I get it. You and I differ a little bit because I did. I mean, I will agree. By far, the time in Themyscira was the bit that I probably liked the least. But I did actually enjoy quite a bit of what happened.
Well, I did too. I did too. But I was also watching it aware that we had a lot more film left and not entirely sure that it would... Do you know what I mean? Like, by the same token, I like the beginning of Batman vs. Superman. And I like the very beginning of Suicide Squad. It's just that the beginning of Suicide Squad never ends. And the beginning of Batman vs. Superman doesn't connect... Do you know what I mean?
Right.
But what I will say is that from the moment they leave the island... the film absolutely comes alive and just gets better from there.
Yeah.
I thought.
The one bit about Themyscira that I didn't care... Okay, I shouldn't say I didn't care for, but it was one of those things that... It was a moment that kind of took me out. It became very, very clear that... the actresses didn't quite have a grasp on Israeli accents.
Yeah.
Which is fair because of all the accents that an actor may be called upon to do. Israeli isn't exactly up there in terms of like, oh yeah, common. You know, it's just...
Right, and often you're dealing with actresses whose voices you know quite well, as well. Yeah,
here's something that I did not realize at first, mostly because I haven't really seen much of her, other than Princess Bride. But I didn't realize that was Robin Wright.
Yeah, who I'm watching in House of Cards at the moment, so I was a little jarred by that. And what else? Oh, Forrest Gump. She's in Forrest Gump. She was great, I thought. Small role, but great.
Yeah, I can't think of her name. That's the problem. Because
they
say her name repeatedly, but it's a very Greek
It's something
name.
like Lycentia, it's something like that.
Like Hippolyta I knew because that's
she's a character in the comics. And...
Yeah, well, I think the other one is too.
Yeah, but I don't think she's as common necessarily.
No. But yeah, but Hippolyta also is like a literary name too. You know, Hippolyta's in Midsummer Night's Dream and all that.
So there's some interesting things. Like, there's some things in Themyscira I like. There's an action scene when things really start kicking off that's so unique visually. And I thought it was interesting because they live in an island that's kind of shielded in a bubble from the outside world, right?
Right.
But the bubble starts to break through when the outside world arrives in the form of World War One, basically.
Yes.
And a pilot crash lands, and he is followed by German soldiers who find their way into Themyscira, where they arrive. The soldiers start attacking them, and they start killing people on the island. I mean, the interesting thing is the other inhabitants of this island aren't Wonder Woman.
Right.
They are just human beings. And that was interesting.
Incredibly badass human beings.
Yeah, but they took bullets and got hit and died. And I thought that was interesting.
What I thought was kind of interesting about it is the response, right? So, I mean, I guess it shouldn't be a surprise, but we're dealing with Themyscira. You have an island full of Amazons who have been placed there for a purpose. Like, they're there and they're not supposed to let anyone else on this damn island because of something that's there. And so when these Germans start showing up, like, their response isn't immediately like, oh, let's go out and, meet our visitors, and then, oh, what do you know, the Germans, screwed them over and shot them or something. No, their first instinct is like, kill them.
Yeah.
Kill everyone. And the Amazons do that. They're just like, we're killing everybody. And
yeah.
Huge battle comes in, and
this kicks off one of my favorite things about the film, and it's the thing that I think the film does best. This is a movie about war. And I'm opening a can of Pepsi, which is why you might be able to hear me opening that. And it starts off with... What's interesting is Diana in this film is quite a naive character early on, but she grows. That's the type of story it is. Mm-hmm. The film also begins with a very naive depiction of war that evolves as she does. So the first person she meets from the outside world is Steve Trevor, who is a spy and pilot in World War One. And when the Germans follow him through and start attacking the Amazons, he tells her those are the bad guys, and she believes him. And she has been told all her life that the world is consumed by war because the god of war, Ares, is corrupting mankind, and it's her duty to kill him, basically. So when she hears this story of there are these Germans and they're the bad guys, she concludes, well, they have been corrupted by Ares, and it's her job to go out there, find him and kill him, and he must be leading the Germans. Otherwise, why would the Germans be bad? Over the course of the story, she is forced to understand, in ways that start off subtle but become more overt, that this is not a war of good guys and bad guys, and that it's a war of people killing each other, whether Ares is involved or not, on both sides. And they don't really shy away from acknowledging that Steve Trevor, as a soldier in this war on one side, is no more or less responsible than the Germans who first start attacking that island. Right. And I thought that was quite a brave choice to make with it.
Yeah, and that's a topic I want to touch on later on.
We will get into that, but I wanted to bring that up first because I think that's ultimately, that's what I think really made... I don't want to say saved, because it was never in danger, but it really made the film what it was, I think.
Mm-hmm. So we there's a little back and forth between Diana, or Wonder Woman, and her mom about her leaving. And
can I just say, by the way, this is a small criticism of the film, but a fair one, I think. Wonder Woman's teary departure from the island takes place in the most impossible to see scene ever rendered on celluloid. Like, it is the darkest, dingiest, most poorly lit movie scene. Do you know what I mean? It was like, I thought someone had put 3D glasses on me and everything had gone dim. It was so dark. What the hell was going on? Was my cinema just terrible?
It might have been. I didn't have any problem with that at all.
Oh, it was so dark. It was ridiculous.
I wonder if there was an issue maybe with your copy.
Well, I watched this in a cinema that had a fire exit too close to the screen, so the bottom right corner of the screen had a green light on the whole time from the exit sign.
Oh, that's always fun.
I mean, I know they can't exactly turn the sign off, but fucking...
Right.
But why build it there and charge money for it? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Anyway, sorry, not part of the film.
Back and forth. And then Diana leaves. Well, I guess before that, we see some kind of interesting stuff.
Are we going through the plot? If we're going to go through the plot in order, we can do this. Let's make sure we don't miss anything.
Well, I don't want to go through every little aspect of it.
Well, it's probably worth mentioning that Diana believes that the Greek god Ares, who is corrupting mankind, can only be killed by a special weapon that they keep on the island, which is a sword that is locked away in a tower. And she agrees, against her mother's wishes, to leave the island with Steve Trevor and go save mankind from Ares by stealing the sword and leaving the island in the dead of night. But she is discovered, and her mother tells her that once she leaves, she can never come back. That's the vital details.
This was a moment that I kind of had to check myself on, because for a second I was going to get upset about this scene, because there's like literally no hesitation from Diana.
No.
Because her mom goes, "You can't come back," and she's actually, I think she's actually aware of this. Like, leaving is a one-way trip.
She doesn't seem surprised.
Right, and so I'm thinking, like, wow, there's just no hesitation, huh? You're just gonna bail. But then I gotta remember, like, these are stories that she had been told since a child, that Ares is out there and it is the Amazon's job to eventually kill him.
Right, and also there's another element to this, which is they're on this island because of the existence of Ares. Like, there might not be any need to come back to the island once he's dead. Do you know what I mean? And I know they don't really bring that up, but it is about their mission. But you also get from this a sense that, and this I think comes through with Hippolyta the whole way through, she knows that what she tells Diana isn't really the whole truth. And I don't just mean very specific secrets. She knows that the version she's given her is a naive myth, you know?
Right.
Which we'll get to, but yeah.
Yeah. So, before we get there, I did actually want to bring this up, which this is something that will carry through the rest of the film. Is right off the bat, we get things about Wonder Woman Diana that immediately set her apart from her DC compatriots. The other two of the Trinity, Superman and Batman. Right away in that battle on Themyscira, it's a very stark reminder that Wonder Woman is the hero that kills. She does.
Yeah.
Like, she's a warrior. She's a warrior first, and the hero thing comes later. And so right off the bat, you see Diana kill people, and while most of the movie, they hide it in the PG-13 death thing. You don't see spurts of blood or anything like that. But throughout the movie, she kills and doesn't think twice about it.
Right.
Which is I always thought was interesting. I mean, granted, with Batman v Superman, we see a Batman that apparently is perfectly okay with killing and machine guns and stuff like that.
But it also plays nicely into the film because this is a Wonder Woman who sees herself as separate from the people she's come to save. And yet falls victim to the same problems she is trying to save them from.
Right, because she is convinced that the world that she enters is completely brainwashed by Ares.
Right.
And she is the one that isn't.
Right.
So, right off the bat, like she kind of has this mental separation from everyone else. You know, in her believing everyone else to be delusional, while she is the holder of the truth.
Right, and similarly, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but this fits in very nicely. There are going on in this film, the backdrop is a set of peace talks to end World War One.
Right.
And she is opposed to these talks on the grounds that as long as Ares is alive, there's no point having the talks.
Mm-hmm.
And without going into detail, that position plays completely into his hands, really.
Yeah.
That's exactly the point of the peace talks. No, I thought that was great, actually. I liked that this was a Wonder Woman who saw herself as... which isn't quite thematically connected to all Wonder Woman, really, but saw herself as totally separate to the world around her, and ultimately was guilty of exactly the same things, you know?
Well, it actually reminds me of... actually, very recently, there was a Wonder Woman annual that came out just a couple weeks ago. And in it, you know, it's all doing the rebirth stuff. But it kind of shows her first meeting with Superman and Batman. And, you know, because she's just recently arrived on the scene. Batman and Superman have already been around for a little bit. And so both Bruce and Clark go to check it out. They go to the military base where she's staying at, and they're trying to spy on her, and basically she catches them.
Right.
Catches them off guard, actually, because Batman and Superman are having this conversation. They're having this little back and forth between each other, and all of a sudden Superman's like, "Oh, this is going to be embarrassing," and Batman's like, "What's embarrassing?" And then Wonder Woman's standing behind him the whole time, and she basically goes, "Well, apparently by your guys' outfit, you are also what this world considers to be vigilantes and heroes. So we might have something in common here. Everyone grab hold of the lasso of truth, and we can know each other." And so they all grab hold of the lasso of truth, and that means she can see into their hearts, and then they can see into hers, and know what they're all about. And she basically goes like, "Well, I know it's in your heart. I know you guys have the right intentions, so I'm sure we'll meet each other again sometime." And she flies off. And Batman's all kind of distraught about it, and Superman goes like, "Well, what's the deal?" It's like, "Well, you saw what I did, right?" And he goes, "Yeah, you saw her heart." "Yeah. Well, she also saw ours." "Okay, what's the problem?" And Batman goes, "We have a lot of catching up to do." Basically saying that they aren't nearly the heroes that she is.
Right.
And it's a great moment. And I think this movie actually shows that quite well in certain scenes.
No, it's great.
That we'll get to. So
it's no, sorry. Yeah, we'll keep plotting it a little bit.
Yeah, we'll keep going. So Wonder Woman and Steve they head off from Themyscira on a rowboat or a sailboat, excuse me. And they're kind of a funny little exchange. And it's the scene on the boat kind of, I think, right away shows us that, okay, this isn't your typical DC movie, all right? DC up to this point has been known, even with Suicide Squad, to have grim, dark, brooding, suffocating at times,
right,
tones. And there's a really funny exchange between Steve and Diana, because, you know, at this point they could have played the card of like, "Oh, what do you mean it's weird for a man and woman to sleep in the same bed together?" But they don't. They do this thing where she's comfortable with it, and then she straight up acknowledges, is like, "Oh, are you afraid of like us experiencing pleasure together?" And so she knows sex. She knows all about it. And there's this really great line, and I couldn't help but chuckle. She goes, "Oh yeah, we know all about it." And Steve's like, "Well, okay, well tell me what you know." He's like, "You don't want to know what we know." He goes, "No, tell me." Like, well, we've come to the conclusion that while men are necessary for procreation, you are not necessary. You are not necessary for pleasure.
Right, and like the DC universe has tried to avoid being overt about this for many years, but like there are a bunch of women who live alone on an island. What do you what do you think they're doing? Do you,
Right,
Right. And no, it's a great scene.
So, yeah, and but what it does is there's stuff that happens later on in the movie that I kind of had to wrestle with myself back and forth of whether I liked it or not. But when I stopped to think back through the events in the movie, this scene on the boat with those two does a good job establishing a relationship between Diana and Steve that grows throughout the movie to a conclusion that makes sense to me.
Right.
So, okay, but once again, that's getting ahead of ourselves. They take a boat to London, which Diana immediately says looks hideous, which I thought was pretty funny.
Right, and World War I era London is pretty hideous. We're talking height of the post-industrial age, and it's great, and she basically comes from paradise.
Right.
This is where the film I think really starts to get good for me. Mm-hmm. Firstly, I actually like the character of Steve Trevor's secretary a lot. I know she's the goofy comic relief, but she plays it so well.
Right, and it's funny because she doesn't play it as like a character who knows like she's goofy.
No, she felt very character. As exaggerated as she was, she felt very real.
Right,
and I like that.
This is a woman of the time, post-Victorian
but still
industrial
a strong
age.
Individual, funny woman.
Right. So yeah, because Diana has come to the world in battle armor and a cloak, sword and shield in hand, and real quick it's like, all right, well this isn't gonna fly, so we gotta go shopping, and they take her shopping, and I thought that was actually a really really funny scene because they keep on putting her in these clothes of the time, these
and she can't do her high kicks or gymnastics in them. My favorite little gag from that is when they dress her in the plainest clothes they can find, and I forget the character's name. It's Etta Candy, isn't it? That's the character's name. Says, yes, like she's no longer the most beautiful woman you ever saw, and she just looks better than ever in the.
Right, because that's the scene where he goes, oh, we need something else to disguise her, and he puts on a pair of glasses on her, and he goes, oh, right, because she's not still the most beautiful woman in the world.
It's great, and that look, by the way, it takes you immediately back to vintage Superman comics. I know it's a little earlier. I mean, it made me think, like, obviously, Wonder Woman is a great movie in its own right, but it made me think how great a Superman movie set during World War I would have been as well, More period superhero movies would be a good thing.
I do have to apologize to our audience who might be hearing some background noise on my end. There's a pretty nasty storm going on, so what you might be hearing is thunder and lightning and rain.
It's pretty quiet since we switched the headset, but hopefully it'll be okay.
Okay. Just let everyone know. Or if I just disappear, my power plant got knocked out.
So from here we meet, what's his name? The guy who's running the piece of cards? I forget. He's got some crumpet McBritish guy. It's
Alistair Britannia.
It's World War I, but he's clearly supposed to be basically Chamberlain. the accommodationist.
He's like a war secretary, you know.
Yeah, and he wants peace and nobody else wants to listen to him. We have a few, like, and basically they conclude, you find out what Steve Trevor's come for, which is, he's stolen a diary of, the German's scientist who's a woman with a scarred face who makes poisoned gas, and she's working on a new type of poison gas that gas masks can't protect, and he's...
Maru.
Does he have the formula at this point, Steve? Does he have the book?
They don't... They have the book. The chemist's name is Maru, who is a comic book character. She is from the comics.
I am not familiar with her, but I thought she probably was, the way they talk about her. Now, this to me...
The interesting enough is that they do kind of play with her a little bit, because in the most recent Wonder Woman comic line, Maru does play a pretty significant part in it, but she's a mercenary who goes by the code name Poison.
See, this was interesting to me because...
they play with her a little bit.
Because this might sound kind of strange, but I have heard comparisons with this film to Superman the movie, and while it's not exactly like that film, there is a certain standing on its own purity to it that I think is very good.
Right.
When they start to introduce these two characters, the Dr. Poison and her boss, who I forget his name, but he's our main villain for most of the movie.
He's German Von Bad Guy.
Right. These characters feel a little bit... They feel like they wandered in from a Marvel movie. Do you know what I mean? They feel a little bit more comic booky than the film around them at times.
So, what's interesting about these characters, I think, in my opinion, I have heard the same thing said about this, and used as a detriment. We actually get a very interesting take on, like, the hero-villain arc. Because generally how movies are set up with a hero and a villain is that the villain is on a path and the hero is on a path. They are aware of each other, and then their paths start to intermingle, and they come into conflict. What we get in this movie actually is a situation where you have the villain's path, you have Wonder Woman's path. She is aware of them and is on a beeline to intercept them. They have no clue she exists.
Right.
So they are operating completely independently of her actions.
It feels like an Indiana Jones movie. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Does that make sense? Because they have that kind of a feeling to them where the quest begins, but the established opponent, usually the Nazis, is working on something without the awareness that someone else... Same thing you just said. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, but like even in Indiana Jones, the Doctor and Indiana Jones do eventually become aware of each other, like midpoint through the film, and become antagonists of each other. The weird thing about this movie is that the villains, while being antagonists, are not antagonizing to Wonder Woman in any way. They don't do anything to her. Yeah. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
It's kind of like if you were like, fucking around and like burning ants with a magnifying glass. It's like fucking ants, and then out of nowhere someone kicks you in the head. It's like,
Save
I've been
the
watching
ants!
you burn ants for years. Like, what the fuck, man? Like, where the hell did you come from? So it's kind of how this movie goes.
So Steve Trevor knows that they're working on this poison gas, and he wants to go and blow up the factory that's making it, basically.
Right. Right. They say no because it's going to hurt the peace talks.
The peace talks, and the peace talks is very important. Wonder Woman wants to go anyway. Steve Trevor agrees. So they go and they assemble a team. Now, this bit I think is interesting.
They assume the Howling Commandos.
This bit I think is interesting because on the surface, it is very similar to the first Captain America movie.
Yes.
In practice, what they do with it is so different that it doesn't bother me at all that it's similar to the first Captain America movie.
Right. So what makes this really interesting is you don't find it all out right away, but you get this team together. You have a Middle Eastern man who won. We get to his backstory later, but you get a Middle Eastern man and an Irishman, and then I think it's fair that we can just zoom ahead. And then they have a Native American guy.
Yeah, the Irishman's Scottish, but sure.
Oh, shit, sorry. I knew that, too.
Well, yeah, because it's the guy from...
Trainspotting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we get this team together, and this is what I personally think is interesting about this team. Each and every one of them has scars, mentally or physically, caused by war.
Right.
And in turn have, in some way, their people or them personally have been abused by the people who, Trevor's like, oh, we're the good guys.
Yeah. And they are kind of vital because it is through these people that Wonder Woman first starts to actually connect with humanity.
Right.
Because she sees people doing bad things and having done bad things and having suffered from both committing the acts and being on the receiving end. Mm-hmm. And yet she finds they are her friends.
Right, because there's a great moment with the Native American character who tells, like, oh, my people are gone. They've been wiped out. And she goes, well, who did this to you? And he points at Steve. He goes, his people. And it's a kind of stark realization that she doesn't quite put together yet, but it's something that she has to learn eventually, that the good guys are just as capable of war,
right,
and doing bad things.
And among this backdrop, there's an interesting setting because each of the characters is trying to come to terms with how they feel about Wonder Woman's mission. And half of them believe that she has come to kill Ares, and when she does, the war will be over. Half of them don't, and Steve sits on the fence. He won't commit to an answer on it. Which is really one of the interesting things about Steve Trevor, actually, because he is confronted with a very naive Wonder Woman frequently in this film. Mm-hmm. And his response is never dismissive.
It's never, right. He's never insulting to her.
Right. I mean, partly this obviously helps that he saw the island.
Right.
But
like the Native American character actually says it perfectly. When they like, how do you
I heard that.
Like, how do you believe in this nonsense? And he goes, well, you've seen what she's done already. Is it that far-fetched?
Yeah.
And that's actually kind of the appropriate response to that, Like even like you and I who are, skeptics, in the face of witnessing the stuff that she does, I think even you and I would be like, well, fuck, maybe,
Steve Trevor is one of the most interesting characters.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's pretty damn loud. He's one of the most interesting characters in the film because he should be boring.
Right.
And at times he should feel like a little too perfect and cliche. Mm-hmm. But he's so fascinating as a man who does all the cliche Indiana Jones stuff, because he's that type of character. He is a lot like Indiana Jones. He's that type of character. And yet, at the end, his turning point is he is capable of acknowledging the role he plays in a destructive system in a way that for a long time even Diana isn't capable of acknowledging in herself. She can't acknowledge her own naivety in it.
Right.
She's a great character, though.
So we're moving on. We get to perhaps the greatest scene in the movie, in my opinion. We get to this point where Steve actually does what he said he's going to do, and he brings her to the front.
Right, because there's some dispute for a little bit about whether they're actually going to go there.
Right. So they get to the front, and it's a thing where, like, okay, well, Steve and his team needs to get across no man's land.
To get to the weapons factory.
To get to a weapons factory, and they think, like, okay, we're going to have to wait till night. We'll have to go through night. And
yeah, but they're in the trenches.
They're in the trenches, and, you know, they're moving. You can see that they're moving people away from this village. And Diana goes, you know, what's going on? And it says, well, the Germans have taken the village. They're using the villagers to help build the trenches as basically slaves. And, you know, there's, you know, women and children, and she's like, okay, well, guys, let's go. And she's just dismayed because no one's willing to go.
And it's interesting
Steve
because
won't go.
It's interesting because she leaves the island thinking she knows more than anybody else about war.
Right.
And this is the first scene where she actually has to see it.
Yeah. And what I think is kind of funny about the scene, and it is one of those things where there is a little bit of this, like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It's a woman main character. Like, don't you forget it. And the scene is actually kind of proof of, or not proof, but a good example of it, because I noticed them, they say this very, very often. That's no man's land. It's no man's land. Between
it was
here
a good
and there,
gag, though.
it's no man's land.
I liked it.
You want to know what this space is? No man's land. Say it with me. No man's land. They say no man's land like 12 times in like the space of like 5 minutes. But what we see, and this is kind of what I wanted to get a point across to Owen before he saw the movie. And this, I think, is a commentary on not just gender role or whatever. This is a commentary on the moment that about to happen is a commentary on, like, superhero movies in general and what they've become. Superhero movies, while entertaining, and I love them to death, have really started to forget the hero part of superhero. We get a lot of these movies, I mean, especially Marvel. You get a lot of these movies where the heroes aren't really doing heroic things anymore. They are...
Right. They're caught up in the ongoing plot machinations, which are from a distance heroic, but...
Right. Or, like, you can go back to Iron Man, all right?
Totally.
If you really think about Iron Man, the first Iron Man,
the first big action scene is him saving himself.
Right.
The second big action scene is him disposing of weapons his own company sold without really, like, people are saved, but it is incidental to what he came there to do.
Yep.
And then the final action scene, he's saving his girlfriend.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. This was Sorry, carry on.
You go through all these movies, and if you really, really look hard about it, the idea of saving people always is secondary to a motivation of beat the villain.
And yet,
villain is always...
In this scene, the film stops so we can go save people. Yes. Because that's the ultimate aim.
And this scene legit gave me chills while watching.
I agree. So and this is 100% exactly what I mean when I say nobody saves anybody in Man of Steel. There's no scene like this in Man of Steel. And yet there is a scene like this in every other Superman movie before it.
Mm-hmm. What we get here is everyone's kind of bickering back and forth about what to do, and Diana basically goes, fuck all this nonsense. There's people that need to be saved. I'm going to save them. And she takes a slow walk out of the trenches, right out into no man's land. No man's land! She drops her cloak, and there she is in the full glory. The outfit, the costume, it's undeniably Wonder Woman. It's not the same costume that we've seen in the comics and stuff like that, but it's undeniably the Wonder Woman costume.
Oh yeah, it's unashamedly
it's red,
like
it's yellow, it's blue.
Short skirt, tiara, lasso, not manacles,
sword and shield,
bracelets. What are they called?
Yeah,
wrist. I was gonna say manacles, but they're like handcuffs.
What the fuck are they called? Brace.
We know what
bands?
we mean.
Yeah. The wrist guard things that are bulletproof.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm crossing. And she just goes for it. And she just starts running, shield in hand, sword in hand. And, the machine gunners all aim at her and start pinning her. And she's blocking bullets with her wrists and everything. And, finally they kind of have her pinned a little bit. And she's basically taking all the fire with her shield. She's blocking everything. And what's great is we actually get to see her actually act tactically as well, because she doesn't just stand there with the shield. She hunkers down and gets her entire body behind the shield. So it's like, okay, so she's not taking a stray bullet, to the thigh or something. And Steve sees this, and it dawns on him. He's like, she's taking all the fire. Go! Everyone, go! And that's when everyone else charges over the line. She is first. She is first over the trench, middle of no man's land, taking all the fire, and then everyone else decides to go. And when it finally lets up, she charges into the trench and just starts wailing on dudes. And it doesn't stop. It does not stop. Like, she clears out the trenches, and then they don't take a second of pause, like, oh, wow, look what she did. No, they keep going right into the village, where she is a one-woman wrecking crew. They show Steve and the team all kind of like being tactical, hiding behind walls and stuff like that.
Yeah, soldiers do.
She's jumping into buildings, beating the crap out of everyone in there. And you see buildings just explode as she goes into, and then she comes flying out of them. And she's running around, and it's awesome. It is.
Oh, it's great.
Awesome.
It's well directed as well.
Yeah, and which is astounding for a director who has never really done action or CG work. How well she gets this across, and not only does she get all this action across, she does a really good job establishing that Wonder Woman fights differently than Superman, than Batman. There's a really great scene or great moment where she's clearing out this room, and this one guy takes a random shot at her, and she looks at him, kind of smiles, and you see the guy go flying out the window, followed right behind by Wonder Woman, just slow motion, just going to town, and it's just it's so hard to describe all the cool things that happen during this scene.
Picks up a tank.
But
there is one bit that thoroughly entertained me though, when it's an interesting moment when there's the sniper in the church building, and it comes time for the sniper on their team to take a shot, and he can't do it.
Yeah, he
so
can't do it.
she picks up, I think it's the tank. She picks up the tank, and she throws it at the sniper, and oh no, they pick up the plate because she saw them do it on the beach. Steve saw
Trevor
them
saw them do it on the beach.
And they pick up a ramp and they throw her into the church, and And they just wreck the church. Just destroy
and
it.
it's funny 'cause
and all the locals come in and they go, yay!
You destroyed our church, but whatever.
Yeah, at that point, someone in the audience actually got up and left. I don't know if it was the blatant church destruction that did it, but they walked out at this point in the movie, this exact moment, which I thought was pretty funny, to be honest.
Like churches didn't get destroyed during World War One. Give me a break.
Maybe it was the historical accuracy. That church was destroyed by the German modders. Wonder Woman wasn't even there at the time, I will have you know.
My grandfather was in that village, and he said there was no woman in a battle skirt destroying Germans.
And then they just have a party. It's nice.
Yeah, and it's kind of one of those things where I think it's kind of unique to World War One. Because there was a lot of, during World War One, of people being, displaced out of their villages or whatever, but still kind of like carrying on a lot.
Right.
Not losing themselves. I mean, the most classic example of this is the Christmas Day Truth,
Yeah.
Where, the soldiers on both sides said, it's Christmas, we don't want to be here, you don't want to be there, let's have a meal, we'll play some soccer, and we won't keep score, and, we'll just have a moment, right? After this, World War II, hits, and that's when we start to see war start to take a toll on human interaction. But for the most part, World War One, there was still a sense of civility to it.
Right.
And,
well, World War One, World War Two was different, but it was World War One that broke that as it went on.
Right.
Because after World War One, how could you go back to civility at the next war?
Mm-hmm. So they have a party. So we get some more scenes here. That does a really good job establishing Wonder Woman's friends. The Steve's ragtag group of mercenaries and stuff, and because the Scottish guy he sings a song, plays the piano, and Steve's like, wow, that's the first time I've heard him sing in years, or months or something like that. The Middle Eastern guy explains to Diana that he originally wanted to be an actor, but because of the color of his skin, he was never going to be allowed to be an actor. So he decided to join, or not join, but utilize the skills he had in the war effort, to make himself some money. And and Steve teaches Diana how to dance, or as she puts it, sway back and forth while music is playing. But then we also get, and this is one of the things where I had to struggle a bit. I did struggle a bit. There is a love scene between Steve and Diana. And every part of me watching this scene unfold kind of like, don't do it. Just don't have the scene. Like, have all the tension that you want leading up to it, just don't have it. But when I really think about it, the love scene actually plays out quite differently than most other love scenes that you see in movies. Because it's not Diana, it's Steve who kind of approaches her with like an admiration. He's in awe. He's in awe of her at this point.
Yeah.
And you can see, because he's hesitant. He's very hesitant, and it's not. To me, it doesn't come across as the sort of hesitation like, oh, well, if we do this, our relationship might get weird. It's a, what could I possibly offer this goddess? What would she even have me, sort of thing. And but no, there's nothing explicit. It's basically they kiss and then they do a establishing shot from outside where the lights turn off,
Right.
But it actually feels right because it's that thing. They just got done with this big battle, right? And it's not to get all technical about it, but there is a physiological response in a lot of people when it comes to battle, and one of them is a desire for sex. After battle, people get fucking horny, and so when I thought about it in those terms, the scene makes a lot of sense to me, actually.
Do you really think that's what they were going for?
Probably not, but
see, the scene doesn't bother me in some respects because they establish that Diana is confident and curious. She doesn't strike me as the type of character to hold off because she's lived on an island with no men. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Right.
What bothers me about the scene, if anything, is they establish early on that she comes from an island where they've come to the conclusion that men aren't necessary, which I thought was a funny gag, and I thought was totally sensible when you establish where she came from. Now, they didn't overtly do this, but by turning it into a love story, for me, there was the risk of unintentionally making the implication that, oh, turns out they are. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah,
but
I don't think there.
I don't think they fell into that trap, really.
Right. I think what is more or less happening here is, if you want to go talk in terms of like sexuality and stuff like that, I think what we're seeing basically here is a Wonder Woman who doesn't necessarily care. Like, that's not in her head.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's what they were going for as well.
Yeah. And there's a kind of a how do I word this? It's not bad or nothing. I just can't think of the right word. I don't want to say gender reversal, but a role switch where it's Steve who has to kind of decide himself whether he wants to do this or not. Wonder Woman is kind of just there, and she kind of gives off the impression of like, well, he can go or he can stay, Right.
Well, it's interesting because obviously Wonder Woman is the protagonist of the film and she's the action star. Mm-hmm. It is interesting that in many ways their roles are reversed, but I do think it's interesting in many ways they aren't. Even though she's the protagonist and he's the eye candy love interest, he still gets a lot more to do than most female love interests get in comparable films. Like, he still gets he gets a lot to do.
He gets a lot to do, but kind of at the end of the day, he is the Bond girl in the movie.
Right, definitely.
He's a sexy sidekick.
Well, a really funny example of this is in the new Ghostbusters movie. Just to switch to a separate movie for a second, Chris Pratt. It is Chris Pratt, isn't it? No, which one is it? Chris Hemsworth.
Hemsworth.
Yeah, sorry, too many Chris's. This is becoming a real problem. in that movie he plays a really dumb, handsome man hired into the company because he's cute. Whose only involvement is to be dumb and to make jokes about how good looking he is until the end when he comes together to something a little bit more, but not because he himself comes together in anything much. You know what I mean?
Right.
Chris Pine's not that, but yeah, sorry.
Oh, just real quick to address the chat. Sam Foreman asks real quick, do you think the film was overrated or underrated? Now, that probably is a topic for when we wrap up. But just to answer your question, Sam, so you don't feel like we're ignoring you, no, I do not think that the movie was either underrated or overrated.
Honestly,
I think it's gotten
I think it's too soon for it. It hasn't even settled. Like, there are critic responses out there, but I don't even think it's settled into a public opinion yet, really, has it? You know? It's still pretty new out.
Yeah,
it's going down pretty well, I'd say.
But yeah, there's a ton of hype for it and a lot of positivity for it, and I think it's earned all of that.
Yeah, that's what I'd say.
So I would say neither, Sam. I think that the movie is amazing on its own accord, and whatever praise it's receiving is earned.
Yeah, I would agree completely. It's a really good film.
All right. So yeah, back to the movie. Next stop, they discover via phone call, which I thought was kind of a weird thing, but I guess I didn't fully understand like what the communications capabilities were of.
Yeah, they get into this village, and the pub they're in apparently has a working phone that still has not been cut off, and you can just phone the guy who's organizing the pizza cards from, and no one's like listening in or anything. You could just give him a ring. Like, if the Germans had the number, could they just call him?
Right. Yeah.
Be like, hello, this is Steve.
Operator, can I speak to head of war in England? But they discover that there's a gala being held not too far away.
Which is also a little bit weird.
It's a little convenient. But this is the waning days of the war.
Definitely.
So like the amount of available fronts to get all these high-ranking Germans together at one time, it's going to be pretty small. So I'm going to give them a pass on it.
I like this scene because the important thing about this scene is that both the major villains are going to be there. Wonder Woman wants to go there to kill Ares. Steve Trevor wants to go there to find out where the gas is, I think, is his main his main goal.
Figure out what they're where they're keeping it.
But when they get there, there's some confusion because it's basically a ball. It's a formal dance, more or less. And when they get there, there's some confusion because Wonder Woman wants to go in and kill Ares. But then Steve Trevor tips his hand and reveals that he does not believe that Ares is responsible for World War I, basically. And what he wants to do is go in and stealthily get the information. And so they have a dispute, and they both come up with fairly terrible plans separately to get in and what they're going to do. Steve Trevor's plan is to steal... It is a very Indiana Jones plan. It's steal a uniform, get inside, befriend Dr. Poison, and get the information from her.
I loved how he botched it. I thought that was amazing.
Well, that whole conversation is pretty great. Because he's like, oh, I'm a big fan of your work. And he's putting on the worst German accent.
So thick, yeah. And he's laying on so thick. And, like, the whole time, Maru is just like, uh-huh.
Right.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Similarly,
yeah, okay, buddy.
Wonder Woman's plan is steal a dress from a woman everyone's looking at as she comes up to the gates. I don't know, like, they cut away very conveniently from that, because there's no way she beat up that woman and put her in the woods without everybody seeing. You know what I mean? They were right by a line of cars. Sorry, that... But she steals a dress and puts a fucking... Like, that's not a small sword that she slips down. Like, she should have been walking like she had toilet roll stuck in her backside, because that sword would have been, like... Right down the back there, but...
it's a little silly.
Yeah. So she goes in with the sword. She meets the general, who she thinks is Ares. And she's about to kill him, but Steve Trevor stops her. Mm-hmm. And...
well, her and the general have a conversation that actually does a pretty good job of because in my head I'm like, there's no way this fucking general is Ares, like, through the whole film. But this conversation did sow a little bit of doubt, where it's like, oh shit, maybe she is right, you know? Because
he might as well have gone. He might as well have gone. Shame if someone would mistake me for an old god for saying that. That would be unfortunate. He might as well have come in and said, well, they don't call me Mac the Ripper for nothing. And then, where did you get the idea I was Jack the Ripper? I'm no relation to... It was a tad convenient. I was not under the impression that guy was Ares. They never managed to convince... I was pretty sure it was who it was quite early on, mainly because I was with someone who called it, but I think the signs were there.
Yeah. So... What makes me laugh is Steve does botch his part of the plan pretty good. Once again, Steve is a Bond girl, so he makes a really dumb mistake because he can't keep it in his pants. Wonder Woman shows up, and he doesn't look at her like oh shit, Diana's here. What am I gonna do? He keeps on, like, giving her, like, these longing looks, like, oh, God, she's
like,
hot.
He could have leaned over to Dr. Poison and been like, hey, like an elbow in the ribs. What do you think of her, eh? Hey? Mm-hmm. Hey? What do you reckon?
What about the gams on that one, huh?
Think I got a shot?
Because he's in the middle of, like, basically telling Dr. Poison that she's beautiful, even though she has, like, these, like, ceramic plates on her face, like, to hide her scars. And so clearly she has some... issues with her looks. She's a little self-conscious. And he just straight up, like, wanders away to the beautiful Amazon who just walked in the room. And she catches him. And she's like, yeah, all right, champ. Fuck you. And she bolts. And he's just like, oh.
Yeah, they both screwed up. And then I think the bravest... choice in the film happens. And they kill everybody in the village they rescued earlier.
Yeah,
they just kill them.
Oh shit, yeah.
Because they test the gas.
Yeah.
And they test it on the village they just rescued. And there are two really heartbreaking things about this. Firstly, this is Diana's first taste of
reality.
Yeah.
Reality's of war. Yeah.
But also, like, they don't explicitly state it, but she just cleared out that village so all those people could move back in.
Right.
Like they were evacuating that village. Mm-hmm. And she went in to save people and got a lot more of them killed.
Yeah.
And she's devastated.
Yeah, does not take it well.
She walks into the gas, she walks around among the poison. Steve tries to rescue her. They come out, they have a chat. Diana's very upset with Steve for what she thinks is stopping her from completing her mission to destroy Ares. She thinks that had she been able to kill Ares, this could have been prevented. And she blames him. She comes to the conclusion that he is not one of the good guys. He is just as bad as everybody else, which is true.
But she frames in a sense of like, oh, you're warped by Ares as well,
right? Because she still sees things as Ares corrupts people directly, I mean, you can see that twist coming a mile off. By the way, the true nature of Ares, it is like they didn't quite do it. They kept it comic booky enough, but the boldest twist of all would have been to have just said that Ares was a total fabrication. I didn't expect them to do it, but
so this is what I kind of wanted to see happen. All right, they track down the general and Professor or Dr. Poison to this base, right? And it's a huge base, and it's going on, and on the outside perimeter of the base, Diana sees the general, gets up, has a fight with him, but he's been taking like this poison or this gas that's been kind of giving him some like super strength shit.
Yeah, Dr. Poison has a gas that does the opposite of kill. It makes you vigorous again.
Mm-hmm. And so they have a fight. She murders him. Just flat out murders him.
It's really great because by this point in the film, pretty much everyone's figured out that's not Ares. But except her, and that sword goes right through him.
Yeah.
I mean, he deserves it, to be fair. I'm not...
absolutely.
I'm not sad he died.
She kills him, and nothing happens.
And she's like, woo!
Nothing at all happens.
Yeah. She's thrilled. Anyone who's seen a movie knows that this is not the end, but she's thrilled.
Right. Yeah. But she looks around, and the war's still going on. People are still loading this gas into a plane, and they're still operating, and they're still acting like their war's on. And she's just like, what?
This is fantastic, by the way, because what you see in this moment is just how naive she was. Mm-hmm. She genuinely, not just believed the whole thing about Ares, but believed that the instant he was dead, everything would stop.
It would, yeah. And it doesn't. It just
and she's
going.
Crushed.
Yeah. And here's the thing, and I still think they get this point across. But there's a part of me who kind of wanted it to just not end there, but be done with villains, I guess. Like,
right. If
the rest of the movie could have still gone on, like, them, we still have to stop this plane, we have to do all this sort of stuff.
If the revelation of the movie was that there was no Ares, it would have been a very brave ending.
Yes, and I part of me almost wants to believe that at a certain point they wanted to, right? As a filmmaker, like Patty Jenkins, she did Monster, which is a critically acclaimed masterpiece, and so there had to be some sort of thought, from a creative standpoint, like, well, wouldn't this be better if we just done right then and there?
I think what they ended up with was a compromise.
Yeah, there was a compromise,
and not a bad one.
What we get is the war's still going on. Steven is his team, like fuck it, like Diana's out of the picture, like she's comatose or whatever because she's all, sad about the war still going on. We still have to do this. We still have to get this job done. So they're going about trying to stop the gas from being loaded onto this plane that's going to be flown to London and dropped, very Captain America-esque.
There's a lot of stuff that feels a lot like Captain America, and yet the film isn't like Captain America at all. It's kind of it's interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of plot points that kind of that are similar, but how they play out and the resolutions from them are very different.
Right.
And so this is going on, and so Diana decides, like, she's like, okay, well, I'm done. And all of a sudden, someone shows up. And it's Alistair Britannia from the beginning, the head of war for the Brits. And it's like, oh, shit.
Just a small note here. The way he starts off appearing only as reflections in glass is really well done. It's just a great effect that I don't really remember having seen that much before. Mm-hmm. I felt quite original.
Yeah, because then she goes outside, like, where the hell is he? And he's not there. and all of a sudden he's a reflection on the inside of the glass. And finally he shows himself, and they do something that's actually really neat. She wants answers, and he's not willing to give it to her. So she's like, well, fuck it, I got this lasso of truth, and she uses it on him. And he's like, oh, okay, fine, you want truth? Here's all of it. And he basically utilizes their connection through the lasso to reveal to her his role in the whole thing. And he is Ares. He straight up says, it is Ares, and that his purpose was never like, I want to destroy humanity. I want to show the world that my father's creation, Zeus's creation, was evil from the get-go.
There's a little, from what I understand, a little more to it than that. He did try to destroy them. But as we learned at the beginning, there was a war that he lost.
Yeah.
And they say early on that they thought he was dead.
Right.
Hippolyta thinks that he's dead. And they reveal that actually he basically fell to Earth powerless, right? Almost powerless.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't actually have the ability to make the humans do anything.
Yeah, he can't force them to start wars.
So the fundamental premise that she believes that Ares corrupts people, it might have been true once, but it's nothing he's been doing. What he does do is give them potentially destructive information he knows they'll be tempted to use, and then watch them
giving them technologies
and then watch them screw themselves up. And he also says making a piece of cod he knows they can't keep. Which, that's the one bit that to me was a little... Like, I get the twist of, it was the guy doing the peace cards, but I don't 100% get that.
Well, from a historical standpoint, the armistice had a lot of clauses in it that essentially led to the rise of the Germans again.
Right, the Treaty of Versailles, that makes sense.
Yeah, if the treaties had been done better, we could have avoided World War II, but there were so many concessions made that
makes sense.
It eventually led to a much bigger conflict, and I think Ares knows this.
No, I can live with that.
And so he basically says, I've come to you now that you've seen the truth.
Oh yeah, because she had a moment. She had a moment, an Ares moment herself, where she was like, "No, you're all basically shit."
Yeah. And he wants her on his side because together they could finish the job. They could wipe out humanity. They can just be done with it. They have a paradise again. Across the world, the ugly London, she mentioned at the beginning, like how ugly it is, gone. It'd be gone, and it'd be trees and wildlife again. And he shows her all this, images of it. And he also reveals to her what her mom did not tell her, was that the God Killer, surprise, surprise, is not the sword.
Who did not see that coming? I mean, aside from anything, Wonder Woman does not use a sword. Therefore, do you know what I mean? Like, I know you shouldn't really deduce things from films like that, but the character doesn't have a sword in the comics. That sword was not lasting.
She does.
Not the classic Wonder Woman. Do you know what I mean?
Right. I mean, I think probably from Crisis on, like post-Crisis, she has always kind of had a sword and shield.
That sword was not going to be the big killing blow.
No, of course not.
In that film. It would be like it would be like making the next Superman movie and giving him a spear and say, well, no, they did that. Hold on. That wasn't even intentional.
Oh, shit. Bye, Aaron. Thanks for
See you later,
tuning
Aaron.
in.
Thanks for watching, man.
And but yeah, he wants her, and she resists, because it's still Ares. So they have a fight, and Ares way overmatched for her, and just kind of wipes the floor. And there's a moment where
I do love, by the way, I know I've made this point so many times in so many comic book movies, but it's Ares from the comics.
Mm-hmm.
Fire and armor and great big scary, like, a cliche demon image.
Yeah.
It's, no Galactus cloud of fog faces in the sky. It's Ares, 100%.
Yeah, and it's great. It's great to see it. Like, I was a little worried that they're gonna try to have this fight between a middle-aged British man and Gal Gadot.
That would have been great.
It's gonna look, but it's him in his full armor, and they do wisely cover his face for the fight, and he just does voice work. Great voice, though, by the way. Who is that actor? He's familiar.
Lupin from Harry Potter, and he was in Island of Dr. Moreau, the Marlon Brando one, and a few other things. David Thewlis is his name. No,
the original one.
Oh, well, there's been a few.
Yeah.
The fact that he was the middle-aged British man before, though, makes that fight better. He is I think this is the strongest villain we've had in this modern run of superhero movies.
Yeah.
Because
sure.
I know it's a cliche at this point. The Marvel movies don't have great villains. Not only that, they're getting worse. I liked the Doctor Strange movie, but Mads Mikkelsen in that is a really forgettable villain.
Oh, absolutely. The thing with Marvel movies, there's never a villain that makes you think that the hero could lose, Right.
I think Guardians 2 was interesting.
Guardians 2, yeah, I would say kind of up the ante a little bit because it's...
But not Guardians 1, which has probably the weakest Marvel villain.
Oh, I would probably give that to Whiplash from Iron Man 2.
See, his story... The sad thing about that is his story's so much better before he becomes proper Whiplash. When he's just naked, burning off the mechanic gear with the homemade ones, he's a much cooler villain than when he actually has the full suit.
Right. So we get this fight, and Diana's kind of fighting because it's still one of those things where well, shit, I'm still in the Amazon, you're still Ares, I'm still supposed to kill you. But she's not in it.
Plus,
you can tell
plus
that she's
the
not
Island
in
of
the
Dr.
fight.
Moreau was a really bad film. You son of a bitch.
This is what you get for being part of that. Lupin was my favorite character. So they have a fight, and at a certain point, and this is one of those things where I thought it was actually really kind of neat how they pulled this off. Ares basically hits her with a bunch of exploding barrels, and just sends her careening, it looks like a fucking mile. She goes flying, right? And she hits the ground, and it's just ringing in her ears. It's like the scene from Saving Private Ryan with
right.
Tom Hanks, shell shock. She's just dazed and confused, and Steve shows up. Because he has already formulated his plan of how to stop the plane. Because the plane's still going on, guys. And it's one of those things where it's like, oh shit, yeah, there was a plane that was full of... I
do like the bit just before this when the humans see Wonder Woman fighting Ares, and they're like, what's she's doing? And Steve's like, I don't know, but if that's who I think it is...
Yeah, we have some problems. But yeah, so he has formulated his plan of how to neutralize the gas, and Diana we'll get into that later. But he tries to talk to Diana, and she can't hear him. She can't hear anything he's saying because her ears are still ringing, and she's just, what, huh? What? What? And finally he just like, fuck it, and gives her a watch and just takes off, right? And Ares shows back up, and he's like, let's go, round 2. Like, I ain't done with you. And they have this fight, and he then imprisoned her, which is a kind of a cool callback to the original Wonder Woman in the comics, because in the original comics, she had a weakness. Wonder Woman's weakness was she would be powerless if ever restrained by a male. Because the guy who created Wonder Woman was a psychopath. He was very big into S&M and believed that restraining women was the best way of treating them psychologically. He had some issues going on. Basically, he had a sexual fetish in a time when sexual fetishism wasn't looked upon fondly, and so he masked it with psychology. And yeah,
you know too much about this.
No, there's a really great documentary about
reading old Wonder Woman comics. Like, he speaks to me.
I get it. So Ares binds her in metal, basically bent girders, steel girders, and binds her, and in such a position where she gets to watch Steve Trevor's plan unfold, because she's looking up and seeing the plane go off, and that's when I think everyone knew what Steve's plan was. But,
except her, because she's so naive.
Yeah. He has hijacked the plane and is flying up, and he's going high enough to where if the plane explodes, it'll be harmless. The gas will dissipate.
Do you think had it gone differently, there'd have been a moment where they went, oh no, now the gas is just in the atmosphere and it's raining down on all of us.
He's made the toxin airborne. But he flies up high enough, has this moment where, and it's a great moment too, where he doesn't like make some final speech, to himself.
Gets on the radio and says, we'll have to go for that dance. Then he gets frozen in ice.
Which is, like I said, this is a great moment where it's the same plot as Winter Soldier.
Samuel L. Jackson's like, oh no, we've brought out the love interest rather than the one with powers.
Shit.
It's the wrong Chris.
Yeah, it's the wrong Chris. There's so many these days. There's Chris Hemsworth and Pratt and Pine and Evans.
It would be great if they got another Chris Pratt, but it was the one from Jurassic Park. So when they finally do the crossover, it's Guardians of the Galaxy Chris Pratt versus Raptor training Chris Pratt.
Right. So he flies up high enough, kind of laughs a little bit to himself, and then shoots the toxins and blows the whole thing up. And Wonder Woman gets to watch the whole thing unfold. And she, rightfully so, loses it. She's just like, fuck!
But because Wonder Woman's so separate and so powerful, you wonder if it's like a love interest thing or if it's more like when a puppy gets run over. Like, right. I just got his shots up to date.
I bought him an embroidered collar, you son of a bitch. But yeah, so he watches it, and then she breaks free of her restraints, and this is where we kind of get the payoff, because they actually tip their hat a little bit about her actual power really early in the movie. There's a training sequence where she, I mean, it's in all the trailers too, where she crosses her arms and basically a giant shockwave comes out. And they make you believe that it's her bracers that do this. That it's, oh, it's a magical bracelets, so, of course they have shockwaves that come out of them. But she takes them off. She takes off the bracers. And which is another interesting callback to a little-known Wonder Woman fact, is that those bracelets are actually there to restrain Wonder Woman's powers. Because without them, she would be nigh unstoppable. And so, at a very early age, they put those on her to keep her in check. But yeah, she takes them off and basically kills Ares. Because once again, Wonder Woman is the hero that kills, and she murders Ares.
And she's like, Marlon Brando, you're next.
Yeah. And then she has the yeah, Marlon Brando. But before that, she starts to she realizes what the conversation was with Steve.
I like this. Like, did she suddenly remember she could lip read and also memorize his lips perfectly?
I imagine it was one of the things where she heard him, but because she was in such a state of confusion,
they wind back and he's going, I hate you. You have screwed up everything. Hold my watch. I'm coming back. I'm going to fly the plane. When I give you the signal, come save me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what you don't see, is like after she defeats Ares, you hear, ah!
I'll always treasure this watch. Ah!
Splat. Shit! Steve, sorry. But yeah, no, and I think that's also kind of a brave moment too in the movie, because there's no last minute saving of Steve.
So, do you know why I think this movie works so well?
Why is that?
It feels like nobody but Patty Jenkins was allowed to touch it.
Yes, exactly. This movie has so many moments that had someone else been involved in the process, they would have changed.
Right. You know, Zack Snyder kept trying to get in. They were like, no, bad Zack. No. Slapping him on the hand. Like, got a rolled up newspaper just for Zack Snyder.
But what if at the last second, like, we had another villain that showed up and, like, or
made of Steve's DNA combined with Ares' helmet, and this is Lobo now, and
right, yeah.
That's going to be the ending of Justice League. Steve Rogers is combined with Zod,
Steve Rogers.
Lex Luthor. Yeah, Steve Rogers. It's the wrong Chris Gromit. Do you know what really annoys me? How much better would this movie be if we hadn't seen Wonder Woman in Dawn of Justice?
Well, I mean, to be fair, she was still the best part of that movie.
Well, yeah, but like now we've got this weird thing of have you noticed we didn't even mention the fact that it begins and ends in the kind of Dawn of Justice era with the reference to Bruce Wayne?
Uh-huh.
Can I just say, by the way, as great as this movie was, that last slow-mo towards the camera shot is really crap. You know what I mean? When she's like, yeah. So it's another interesting. Like Wonder Woman has a complex history with flight, right? Like it's she doesn't always fly. Sometimes she does. Sometimes she doesn't.
Sometimes she had a jet.
She did not fly in this movie, right? Like we see a jump at the end. The DC universe DC. I'm calling it the DC Cinematic Universe. I don't care what they're calling it. Version of Wonder Woman does not fly. Am I right? Like.
Yeah, I think we've decided to establish that this Wonder Woman does not fly.
Right. And I think that's fair enough, because Superman flies, Batman has the gadgets, Wonder Woman beats the crap out of people. It's a nice...
And kills.
And kill. Well, to be fair, Superman kills a lot of people, and Batman kills a lot of people, and Superman in this version. The DC Universe is just full of people who kill.
Yeah.
To be fair. I can't wait for Killer Robin. No, it was good. I liked it.
Yeah.
I liked it more than any DC movie so far of the recent batch.
The ending almost felt like it should have been like, oh, and I learned a valuable lesson about war and humanity, and when I hang up this phone, I'm going to show them everything. And just her flying towards the camera with the Crystal Method playing in the background.
So I will say this. I know that when she left the island, they said, you can never come back. I was surprised that she didn't attempt to go back or see anybody else from the island. I'm not saying they should have. I just think that was conspicuous in its absence. Some resolution to that?
I thought about it. I think in my justification why that didn't happen is she's changed. She knows the truth about herself. Right. She's now been a part of this world, of the man's world. She's seen what it is capable of and why she's necessary.
She now understands why she can't go back in a deeper way.
Right.
Because she can't go back.
Yeah, she can't go back to the naivety that she had before.
Did you see that? It's a picture of a comment thread going around where someone said, I just worry about what this movie's going to teach kids. And someone was like, what on earth are you talking about? And they said that they can expect more good DC movies in future. I don't like to be... I give every DC movie a chance when I see it. And they screw it up, usually. I think this is not only better than most DC movies, I think it's probably better than quite a few Marvel ones as well.
Yeah. I was going to say this. What I think is interesting about this movie is we have to remember this movie has still been in production. This movie had begun production before Dawn of Justice had been released. So the weird thing is that you can't even say that this movie was created because of a reaction to the critical and fan base reaction.
And it doesn't feel like it. It feels completely its own thing.
So I'm wondering if what the real issue here is Zack Snyder is just not a good filmmaker.
Well, I mean, when you look at the films Zack Snyder's done, can you think of any of them that are good? Really?
I don't mind 300, but there's not a lot of substance to that movie. There's not a lot of substance to that comic.
And what I will say, and this is going to sound dismissive of 300, but 300 is good at being its own very, very specific thing. I wouldn't necessarily say it contains a lot of things you can take and apply to a different type of movie.
I will also say, I might be the minority here. I actually kind of liked Watchmen.
I think it's fine if you're going to do a movie of Watchmen.
I think it's a perfectly serviceable film.
The problem with a movie of Watchmen is it would work better with more changes, but it's got a religious following that would never accept a version with more changes.
Right. The issues with Watchmen has nothing to do with the filmmaking, everything to do with source material. In my opinion.
Here's the crucial question then. Is it, if we were to line them all up and say it, would it be fair to say the best Zack Snyder movie is Legend of the Guardians, The Owls of Ga'Hoole?
I remember actually wanting to see that, because I think it looks really cool. But I never
I don't know
did.
anybody who's seen it. Do you know anyone who's seen it?
Yeah. I remember seeing the trailers and being really into it. Like, being really into the trailers.
But it came out like,
really
what, 2010?
Fuck if I know, man.
To me, like, Wonder Woman is everything that the DC Expanded Universe hasn't been so far. Like, Man of Steel clearly wants to be the first start of a new Nolan trilogy. That's always been my read on it. It wanted to be the Dark Knight for Superman.
Yeah.
But it forgot that trilogy didn't start with the Dark Knight. It started with Batman Begins. And Man of Steel was not Batman Begins of Superman. And then they wanted to be the Avengers, so they were like, let's make Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice. And it's like, and making the sequel to Man of Steel a 3-superhero movie that's only named after 2 of the superheroes and is also called Dawn of Justice and is do you know what? Everything about that is too much. Everything about that film, it doesn't scream like it. You never watch it and go, Zack Snyder really wanted to make a movie with Superman and Batman in. You go, well, if we throw... You see someone going, well, if we throw enough shit in there that we can merchandise, someone will pay to see it. You know?
Here's what I will say about Zack Snyder. He is ambitious in a way that filmmakers just aren't anymore.
Yeah.
Which I can admire. Because you look at Dawn of Justice and it's clear that he wants to tell a ideological story about these two characters. Like, why are they different? Why would they be opposed to each other? What would push them to...
Yeah, he just didn't have an answer that was interesting.
Right. But here's the thing, like, the filmmakers who do have those ambitions to do that also tend to, like, try to be very subdued about how they do it. Like, you have M. Night Shyamalan, who you could say is ambitious, but he always kind of makes these kind of visually unassuming films,
Right.
Zack Snyder is that kind of rare breed who has these ideas of making poignant films and then pairing it with bombastic imagery.
Yeah.
Which is something that no one else does, and I will give him credit for that. Like, not a great film.
I think that's fair. He tries to make...
Punch, Sucker Punch, same thing. He wanted to talk about this idea of, like, abuse and coping with abuse and, like, PTSD, and how some people just don't make it out of that funk. And he tried to do it in a very unique way. Didn't land. It didn't land.
He tries to make interesting films, and I do respect him for that. He just fails a lot.
Yeah.
This film is so great because it feels like the first film from the DC, universe that was made because someone who liked Wonder Woman and believed in it as a project really wanted to make a good Wonder Woman film and tried to make one. No other DC Universe film feels like that. It always feels like... I've said this before, and I'll say it again, and I will go to my grave saying this about Man of Steel. It feels like a movie made by someone who doesn't like Superman that much, but has to make a Superman movie.
Right.
And so the whole thing is trying to find a way to make Superman interesting because he thinks the fundamentals of Superman aren't interesting. And this wasn't that at all. Like, this is someone who fundamentally thinks that a superhero who wants to help people and wants to learn... Like, it's clear that everyone involved in this really believed in Wonder Woman as a character.
Yeah.
And I think that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of, if you think about it, that's what, I mean, I think Superman Returns is a decent movie, but this is what Superman Returns got wrong as well. Superman Returns is made by people who don't like Superman, but really like those old Christopher Reeve Superman movies.
Yeah, those Donner films.
Yeah. The best review I ever saw of Superman Returns just said, "I've never seen a movie so in love with another movie." Which is true.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, Wonder Woman. It's damn good. It's a damn good film.
It is good. We should probably start wrapping up, though, if we're going to cover the PlayStation conference tonight.
Yes. But before we wrap up, we do have a question in the chat that I think is a good question, and that is still related to comic books. Sam Foreman asks, question about Marvel for the Q&A at the end. Have you both seen the Black Panther trailer? If so, do you like the look of the basic storyline, etc.? I have seen it. I watched it 3 times last night. Just kind of
Vaseline in one hand, phone in another.
I think it looks amazing.
I will say something that will get me into a small amount of trouble. And I phrased it like that because it'll make me sound racist. But what I actually mean is I haven't seen the trailer yet.
Oh. It's you know what? It is very short. Why don't you watch it right now? Because it's a teaser. I'll vamp.
I can do that.
And yes.
The reason, by the way,
well,
I said it would make me sound racist was because it's an all-black cast, not because I actually had negative views towards the trailer. I'm just correcting people on that.
Right.
I'm sleepy. I shouldn't make jokes.
I have seen it, and I will say right away that if they're going to stick with the aesthetics of the movie, it is going to be a very, very important film.
Hold on. Whoop. I'm going to have to just mute the audio here, or I'm going to go watch it. I'm going to watch it. You're going to hear some slightly audio from my trailer here.
That's
I'm going to have to slip my headphones down a little. Can't hear you if you say anything to me, John. Alright, we got,
no, that's fine.
Got the Hobbit here.
Yep.
Gollum.
It's a reunion. So, yep, we can hear Owen listening to it as we speak. What I will say, since he can't hear me, is I think it's amazing that they are pairing a technologically advanced society with some of that more traditional African...
I was wondering if we'd see this character from Age of Ultron again.
Because there's images of, people in tribal masks and makeup and garb coexisting with like supercars and flying cars and stuff, and it's
high tech there. Still can't hear you, John. You better be saying interesting things.
Well, I'm trying to, Owen, but thank you for having the faith in me. And I'll also say I love that soundtrack already. I love that song that they use. It's the kind of same thing that Luke Cage got right. Because when we're talking about these characters, you can't deny the place of modern black culture and its effects on pop culture as a whole.
And I'm back. Did you entertain everybody?
I hope so. All right, what'd you think of it?
That looks really cool.
Yeah. So what I was saying already, and I'm curious if you might agree, One of the most interesting things I think seeing is they're not shying away from having the more traditional African aesthetics, the garb and the masks and the makeup coexist with that super technologically advanced society.
Which is what you would expect to see in a closed-off African society that was still developing to a level of high-tech, I suppose.
Well, that's the thing. They're not still developing. They have developed far beyond everyone else.
No, that's what I mean. Developing towards developing futuristically,
Yeah.
I meant sealed off and still developing, as opposed to when a country seals off and stagnates. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like North Korea.
Right. Yeah, because Wakanda is a really fascinating place because, for those who don't know, Wakanda is the sole source of a mineral called vibranium, which has amazing properties. It's what's partly what Steve Rogers' shield is made out of. And they've utilized this source of vibranium to develop into this super society. But like we said, they're also isolationists. So they've retained the traditions of old, or the culture of ancient, their ancient culture,
Right.
which is unique. And Black Panther himself, while I don't know as much about him as I'd like to, what I do know is that he's a very interesting character because he blends the lines between a tech hero, like a Batman sort of hero, and a mystical hero, because he gains his powers from the Panther spirit, essentially.
Right.
And the title of Black Panther, kind of like Avatar, The Last Airbender sort of thing. He can actually commune with past Black Panthers, so he can speak to his ancestors. But he's also the king of a highly advanced society, so he has to kind of blend this line between being a good leader to a incredibly powerful society while still holding this mantle of Black Panther because it is his right. It's his birthright.
Speaking of which, ironically, Marvel just cancelled a Black Panther book. Funnily enough, Black Panther: World of Wakanda.
Oh, okay. No, that makes sense. There was some pretty cool stuff going on in that book, from what I understand. But Black Panther also has like currently 3 books going on.
Right.
And so one of them was going to get cut. I think there's a normal Black Panther. There's the World of Wakanda, and then he's in. I can't remember if it's Luke Cage and the crew or is it Black Panther and the crew.
All we know is there's a crew.
Right. It's basically all their black heroes. There's Misty Knight, Luke Cage, Black Panther, Storm.
Have you noticed Marvel's thing is very much introducing characters ahead of the film they're going to be in now?
Which is not a bad idea,
No, I mean, they've done it with Black Panther. They did it with Spider-Man, obviously. But that's because they really wanted to get Spider-Man in as soon as possible.
Oh, yeah.
There's someone else, and I've forgotten them. But they have done it before. It's been coming up more often. It's an interesting approach, I think. Alright, man. We are going to have to finish up, I think.
Yep.
That looks good.
All right.
I like Black Panther. I'm looking forward to that movie.
Okay, so, question. For the press conference, what are your plans with this?
I am going to stream it on my channel. I'm going to go
Okay.
away and have some coffee. I think it starts at 2:30 for me, which is in 2.5 hours. I need to wake up a little bit before then. We'll probably do it, we'll need some kind of voice chat. Skype, maybe? We do Skype?
Ooh, we might still be able to use the party system, shouldn't we?
I'm not streaming it through the PS4.
Okay. All right.
That
Well,
would not be feasible.
we will work something out. We won't do this on our stream.
We can use something.
Yeah,
We could do a
we'll figure
Google
something out.
Hangout, if nothing else.
All right, everybody. Thank you once again for joining us. This has been Those Aren't Biscuits. I hope you have appreciated and enjoyed our rundown of Wonder Woman. As always, you can get a hold of us at the show at our Twitter, which is @NotBiscuits. Please like and subscribe to this channel. And where can they find you personally?
You can find me by going to my YouTube channel at youtube.com/Owen Adams. That's about everything. You can get to everything from there.
Mm-hmm. And you can find me on my Twitter, which is @JohnCPerson, or my blog, which is johncperson.wordpress.com. So please like and subscribe this video. And while you're there, check out the Let's Play series that is currently ongoing of the Destiny DLC. A little bit of House of Wolves, The Taken King mostly. And yeah, drop in, leave a comment. Once again, like and subscribe. Please help us get bigger.
Do it!
All right, have a good one.
See you later, guys. Bye-bye.